Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by thanking the Horowitz family, the Israel Democracy Institute, for this consistent initiative holding the conference, the annual conference, year after year. The conference outcomes have well served our decision makers for forging economic and social policy in Israel. I want to thank Mr. Yarom Ariav personally and Dr. Ari Carmon for the impeccable organization, and thank you for inviting me to speak here tonight. I would like to take a personal tone this evening and tell you my thoughts and feelings of recent months in my capacity of Deputy Finance Minister. I have to admit that just before the elections, I never dreamt I'd find myself in such an influential position at the Treasury, in charge of taxes and securities and the money markets in such a difficult period. As soon as we assumed office, we were faced with a difficult task of passing a complicated budget in a very short period of time. As you've probably realized, we didn't have a single moment of grace to learn this complex, vast system of government. Passing the budget was only the first urgent task that we were called upon to do. Immediately afterwards, we knew that we wanted to introduce essential change in the very workings of politics here in Israel and introduce change. I often ask myself, what would I want to see in Israel in general, in the Ministry of Finance? How can we achieve that change? How can we get good results and improve upon those of my predecessors, Cohen and Steinitz, and I value their work very much. How can I do what they failed at doing? As a manager and a political leader, I realized that I would have to internalize that all I can hope for is some slight improvement. But in order to introduce drastic changes, we have to think outside the box. And I found the solution when I went to visit Google, and I had an epiphany there. It was only there that I understood that as a result of inertia, the government does the same things with the same tools over and over again. The knowledge revolution has produced perhaps a computer on every desk, and people do use email rather than snail mail, but these are trifles. At Google, I understood that the technological revolution has not yet filtered down into the core of government. It may be counterintuitive, but the fact is we're a startup nation and we're whizzes at technological innovation, but we're not that great as having this technology infiltrate all our systems. Singapore is a case in point. 30 years ago, we had the same GDP as Singapore, but it made its technology a tool not just for industry, and it doubled its wealth as a result of properly using its technologies. As you see, I'm not so young anymore. I'm still getting help from my children and even my grandchildren. They help me use certain functions on the computer. My grandchildren tell me again and again, Granddad, why don't you just send WhatsApp? Or why don't you get an upgrade already? And they take my iPad, and who knows what they do with it when I'm not looking. They take my iPhone, who knows what they're doing with it. and I can't even use it when they give it back to me, and I have to remove the battery and reset. It's a cliche to say that technology has changed the world and enables things that when I was young were beyond science fiction, but it's the truth. And we should understand the implications of this as regards government work. Here in my pocket, I have stronger computing powers than the first spaceship that landed on the moon. I can tell you what height the waves are in Bondi in Australia, what the wind speed is in South Dakota. I can describe any house in Paris to you. But at the same time, unfortunately, I cannot tell you what I use, how much electricity I use at home. I can't tell you how much I owe the tax authorities, and I can't tell you where my grandchildren will go to school in a year or two. And the reason for that is that information of that sort isn't in the government's hands. And if they have it, they don't publish it. And if they publish it, it's not accessible to the public. And if this information is accessible to the public, most people simply cannot understand it in its current format. And here I want to go back to the previous question. What do I have to do tomorrow morning in order to lead real change, transformative change? And the answer is I'm limited in what I can do to improve upon my predecessors. But you sitting here, you have no bounds, and you certainly can. You and thousands of talented young people studying at university or sitting in their garages and developing new ideas and new startups beyond imagination. Therefore, it is my role, as I conceive it, to tell all these systems that they must, absolutely must, conduct a dialogue among each other, among themselves, and we have to improve our physical infrastructure and instruct people how to tell people to use infrastructure. Waze taught everybody to use GPS. Hardly anybody manages without that today. We have to build the infrastructure for the government and private sector to cooperate so that they can offer better services to the public. We want to facilitate government work and enable us, the government ministers, better understand what's happening in the country and adapt our policies accordingly to be most efficient and cope with the burning issues of our citizens. In order to clarify the potential of technology, let me put on my previous hat for a moment as commander of the Jerusalem region, and I'll go back 1 month to that mass burial procession of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. We wanted to enable people to come to the procession and go home. We wanted to disturb the peace as little as possible and enable everyone to get home in peace and quiet. And of course, this was unplanned. We had to plan on the spot and do everything possible in real time. There's a CEO sitting here who can help me introduce this kind of thing. When I was in office, I couldn't do that. A policeman in Jerusalem can call someone at Waze, an employee, and together they can think which streets to close off, how to direct traffic to Jerusalem and back. Hundreds of thousands have to change their route as a result of looking up the route on the internet. The internet can forecast where the traffic will be heaviest. The Ministry of Transportation in real time can use complicated algorithms to change the traffic lights and reduce traffic jams. And I haven't even said anything yet about water, electricity, and sewage infrastructures, welfare systems, education workers, and many others. These actions can be done in every system on its own, but they cannot coordinate their efforts in real time. Our goal is to coordinate government and civilian systems and infrastructures in the most effective and speedy fashion. Doing this for a vast system made up of many different units, using different languages, different tools, with different goals, is a very difficult task. In fact, today, the technological infrastructure of Israeli economy and society is like the Tower of Babylon. In order for our economy to grow and society to develop, all the systems have to work in coordination, in sync, using the same language towards the same goal. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to make the Tower of Babel into the Tower of Israel. For this, we need advanced technology. Some of it isn't even in place yet. We have to provide a response for individual needs. That's precisely our role as government, to provide responses as early as possible and even before the problems arise when possible. The bottom line, everything I've just described makes it necessary for the government to open up its databases, open up its thinking. This is the starting point for cooperation between the private sector, government sector, academia, the press, the third sector. Our ministry combats the black market. We have to open the databases, government databases, that can introduce real change. We're talking about money laundering and tax evasion in staggering amounts, 150 billion shekel approximately, 20 billion shekel from crime, prostitution, white slavery, drug trafficking, stealing sand, stealing lands, 8 billion shekel. We're talking about forged invoices. People buy these and then claim tax returns, and these falsified invoices are claimed as tax benefits. In order to combat this tax evasion and the black market, I need more than adding 1,000 people to my workforce. I need wide, sophisticated technological support. In order to do that, we've developed a toolbox, a set of tools, and we passed the change law that requires reporting a 50,000 shekel transaction and upwards. We have legislation to discover tax evasion, crime. We have laws. As my colleague here knows, the head of the Finance Committee, we're enacting this legislation. Nissan is right here. The tax evasion will become part of the criminal code in order to be a further deterrent. We have no choice. With this money, we'll be able to lower taxes. We'll be able to lower the cost of living, contribute to education, infrastructure, everything we need to do. And it belongs to all of us, this money. We added 40 posts to our workforce to combat the black market and money laundering. This money has to be funneled back into the government. It is inconceivable that when touching your iPhone screen can transfer millions in the basement of the Treasury offices. We have fictive invoices at our own cafeteria in the basement and upstairs. We know nothing of this. In 2013, everything has to be online, accessible, open, and clear to the public. As I promised the younger people at the workshops, people who volunteer their time, I will do everything in my capacity to open up our databases, the government databases. And I'm going to start with the tax authority databases. That is our duty if we want to bring about real change and bring the government to the era of technology. In order to do that, and in order to fight the black market and money laundering, we need 1,000 new workers, but even that is not enough. We have to develop real technologies. I wish you all a productive conference, and I hope we come out of here with 2 or 3 core decisions that will enable us to formulate a plan of action. Thank you very much.